Welcome back. Welcome back to Wealth Builder Movement. So far, we've had a wonderful introductory conversation about the state of Black and brown wealth. We've talked about how you can build legacy wealth within your family and some of the challenges, but certainly some of the opportunities. And in our last conversation, we were talking a lot about family contracts and relationship building within family members. And so we are here with Dana Cosby, who is going to really help us flush that out because Dana is not only a lawyer, so she's the general counsel for Nimbus Inc. She's also the chief operating officer for Nimbus Inc., one of our sponsors and marketing firms. But Dana is what I like to call kind of the relationship, extraordinaire in terms of the business world. So Dana, can I share your nickname? So Dana, we call Dana the business side chick. She is the CEO's best friend. So Dana will literally get your whole life together. So Dana, here we're talking today about building relationships and just, what are the critical relationships that you need when you're trying to build wealth? So can you give us just, A, what is social capital? Can I take it to the bank? And B, how do I get it?
Okay, so the most important thing, there are certain groups that are really good with social capital. So sometimes when you hear these terms, they're very academic. Mm. But there are two groups who are very good with social capital: poor people and wealthy people. Mm. Okay? Poor people use relationships to survive. Mm. And so, for example, I've been pretty fortunate. So my memories of being poor when I was in college. So I was a poor college student. And so you basically use relationships to see who still had money on their card, who could still get meals, and when that money started getting low at the end of the semester, we said who had the books so I wouldn't have to buy them next year. Mm-hmm. So those are examples of how we do that to survive when we don't have resources. Then you have the wealthy who use it for connections. Mm-hmm. So you have relationships, you have family, you have friends, but certain connections give you access to things. Mm-hmm. You want access to knowledge, access to resources. All of those things are very important, particularly for businesses. Mm-hmm. You want to be prosperous, you want to do well. And so that's how social capital plays. Now, social capital spins like financial capital. Mm-hmm. So when you can go out and pay for things, but some of these things you can get through relationships and connections. So you get those resources, you get that access without having to actually spend cash for it.
Oh, wow. So a lot of times when we're thinking about social capital, a lot of times we kind of think about in those two compartments, like you said, like the poor and the wealthy. And it sounds like the wealthy people, they go ahead and they get connections, right? They get things through connections. And then you said the poor people, they leverage their connections just to kind of survive. But when I'm trying to go from being poor, sort of say, to being wealthy or to having wealth wellness, it almost seems like a bridge too far I feel like, how do I get those connections? Like either I have the connections or I don't. Can you build social capital or are you just born into social capital?
Well, now business people, for the average person, when we start becoming like myself, where your goal was to become professional. So you become part of the middle class, you start doing middle class people things. You get your education, you work on moving ahead in your career, you start thinking about retirement, you volunteer, you serve on boards. So you know what that looks like. It fills up your entire resume. Okay. And so networking tends to be something you need to do, volunteering. So you're meeting people all the time. The problem is when you're middle class and professional, you think where you need to go to get help is on the job. You do it at work. You go back to your professors. You go back to the people where you got the education and the degree. Now, poor people and wealthy people are like, oh no, what social capital happens away from the job. So when you think about professionals, those people who go have the cocktail or the coffee or go hang out, that's where social capital is built. So it's not in the meeting. It's not when you find yourself, if this looks more like social capital. If you're sitting, it's relaxed and you don't have a big time limit and it's just tell me what's going on with you. That's how you build social capital, because what entrepreneurs have to do is you got to tell people what you're doing. You got to tell them what you're trying to accomplish and what challenges are you meeting so people can offer to help you. And the way it works is you have to invest, meaning you have to do it too. So I tell you what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to accomplish. You tell me what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And we sit there and we figure out, how can I help you do that? So that's what social capital, that's how it looks like, and that's where it happens.
So to that point, I think that's where some of us get kind of tripped up, which is I have to be honest and vulnerable about my financial situation. So I got to talk money at the coffee table. I got to talk money at the dinner table. I got to talk money, when I'm just out kicking it with friends to build social capital. I mean, I know I don't think we do that too well in the Black and Brown community. That's something that we want to do better. But how do we kind of change that? And how do we do that? How do we talk about money like it's casual conversation, coming back from the gym together?
And like everything else, I don't think you just bust it out like, hey, by the way, I'm trying to raise $10 million. But it's about forming relationships. You got to date the person. Yeah. A lot of times I think, like with some of my female friends, they want to meet somebody. So their goal is to find a mate. Okay. Now, lots of people meet their mate through introductions. Okay. So you can go online, you can do all these things. But let's be honest, a lot of times, that's how I met my husband. We were introduced. And so how do you if you don't tell people you're looking, if you don't tell people that I want, then that's a vulnerability. But how do you get people to give you that connection if you don't tell them? And I think some people, because it's true, we get conveyed, don't let people see your cards. Don't let people know, in fact, as a professional, as as an attorney, I need to look like I got it all together. I need to look like I know everything and I got everything. And that is a lot of pressure on professionals and middle-class people who they need to look like they got it. And there's so much pressure. Yeah. But I think when you get focused on acquiring wealth, when you start having a goal, when you start saying, I want to be married by this age, I want to have my business have this many customers and clients, then you start realizing social capital is one of the best ways to get to that goal. So as long as you focus on the goal, it gets so much easier.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting. You said, feeling like you have to look like you have it all together. I know for myself, I'm always telling, at MEMSA, this is our kind of, motto. So, okay, we want to get some information out of somebody. We want to play dumb. That's the best, because people that have knowledge want to share. So sometimes, and it makes people feel good to be able to share. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot you don't know. But I think sometimes we come in wanting to prove how much we do out on letting that person just relax into the conversation and just, let them narrate. Sometimes, that's part of the social capital scene. If you are, let's say you know where you want to go. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur. I know I want to start a business. This is something hypothetical. Let's say I know I want to start a production company. Okay. And I don't have any production friends. And I don't have any friends of friends that are in production. So is it as easy as me just kind of going on, I don't know, where would I go? Would I just Google production people and just send them a cold call?
People are finding ways to connect through social media. So I would say when I started my career, that would have been a very hard thing to do because you would have been limited to the people in the place where you live. I'm old, but I ain't that old. So we did have the internet, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have ways to go because people are formed. As the business side chick, I work with a lot of Black women-owned businesses, and they have formed groups. They have gotten together and said, hey, you're over there in Atlanta and you're over there in DC, and we're all going through it, so let's get together. And they talk. But they have joined, and so there's probably a group of Black creatives, production companies. So you just kind of go find your tribe, and it is so much easier to do that in social media. It's only getting easier because you can get yourself out there and say, I'm in production. Anybody want to help me? And there's a way now you can hear from people in a way we didn't have before.
Yeah, I think people undervalue LinkedIn. There have been so many times where I'm like, we need to get this bit of knowledge, right? And I will just go through LinkedIn. And I will connect and send people messages, And maybe, it's only 3 out of 20 people that respond.
Right.
But all you need is one person with the knowledge. So I know LinkedIn, I like your point because LinkedIn is a great way. And there's so many things like Facebook groups, even with the Wealth Builder movement we're trying to do, right? There could be somebody in this very group, right? And this very collective that has what you need. But I have another question. So I'm trying to build wealth. Yep. We know that there's basically 3 primary ways to do it. Yep. Through entrepreneurship, through the stock market, through real estate investment, right?
Right.
Who do I need to form relationships? If I had a starting lineup, right? A top 5 of relationships that I needed to really get this wealth train moving. Do you have a kind of top 5 or at least maybe a top 3 you would recommend? Who do I need in my corner? Some essentials, like obviously an accountant probably, or maybe not.
Oh, and see, that's the thing. The interesting thing is accountants, lawyers, you can pay them. Yeah. So what people have found out with me, if you have a lawyer friend, Angelique, you might be able to take them out for a drink of coffee and get that question answered. So you could go spend the money, and there's plenty of lawyers out here who are very knowledgeable and capable, but there's an hourly rate associated with that. So social capital spends that way, which if you have that relationship, but you're going to have a relationship with an accountant anyway. And so I can't say that everybody has turned that accountant relationship into a social capital. It could be a client, account professional relationship, but you can see the benefits. So if you're not getting chummy with your accountant, I could give you an example. I grew up in a household where my parents were business owners. So weren't business owners when I was younger. And so most of the people at our family get-togethers and occasions were Pookie, Nene, and Ray Ray from the grown up. And we have a big family. And I just grew up in this environment with people because my parents are from Louisville and it was all this hometown stuff. Yeah. As my parents went into business, the people showing up at the family functions were now their accountant, their lawyer, their banker. And these were people as their child. If I had a question, I could call them up. So their CPA became my uncle. The insurance guy became somebody I'm David and Anita's daughter. And so you could just call them up and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing something. Well, do you know how you're going to get paid? And so you have this way of so my parents extended my social capital beyond my friends and family. I got to inherit it. So social capital was a pre-existing condition for me because my parents developed it. And so that is, as you become an entrepreneur, who you consider to be your network. So you could pay your accountant, but sometimes, it's not, your accountant's good, but you can't get to them. Yeah. But those are those necessary. So you're going to have them regardless. So what I would say is maybe your social capital is not the people you can pay, because you can pay those people. So if you can't figure out how to get free legal advice from Dana, you can still go pay to get legal advice. Yeah. But what about those people who want to help you get clients, who know people? I mean, one of the things you'll happen in social capital is you can ask yourself, how many introductions have I made? How many people am I hooking up? That's what somebody who's doing social capital, you're getting hooked up. They're saying, let me introduce you to somebody. When you end a conversation with somebody, I know somebody you need to talk to, and they actually make the introduction. And you get the introduction. That's how social capital plays. Yeah. So you want somebody who knows people.
Listen, people who know people.
And who feel comfortable saying, because some people know people, but they don't feel comfortable making the introduction.
They're very exclusive, which is another point.
Yeah.
Because the movement is very much so about how do we shift the collective needle. Yeah. And if we're not willing to share our contact lists with individuals, then what really are we sharing, right? What's our value in connecting and knowing each other? I've met so many people and that I only met because somebody did just that. They said, oh, you do have a medical device startup? Oh yeah, you need to meet so-and-so. And then so-and-so introduces me to who's who, right? And it just goes down the train when you do that. But do you feel that we're maybe a little bit more hesitant, like to kind of share those? Or do you feel that everybody's hesitant across the board and you just got to get with meet the right person? Or
I think those who've had the benefit of it are easy with it. They've, it's been something they've experienced and know the benefits, so it's easy for them to do it. I think people who haven't, unfortunately, have not had that opportunity. And so a lot of times they're worried about, I don't know how that's going to affect my relationship with them. And so if people ask me, don't you worry about introducing people? I'm like, no, I tell them the truth. Okay, look, I'm going to need you to talk to this person. He ain't right, but let's just give him a chance. Yeah. You just tell them the truth. Like sometimes we're just helping people out. Sometimes we're doing favors. Yeah. And so you warn them, like you're really going to have to, I can't vouch. Sometimes I have to tell people, I've never seen their work, but I like this person, but I cannot vouch for their work, but I can vouch that they'll be an easy person to talk to.
Mm.
You know, you just tell, like, be fair to people. You don't just hand off people to them. Like, you tell them, this is what I know about them, and this is, I would like for you to help them. Now, sometimes you're calling in favors. A lot of times when I'm making introductions, they're like, oh, yeah, Dana, I'm going to talk to this person because I'm going to come back to you and ask for something. And some people really hate owing people. And, you know, like they say it, I don't like owing people favors, but the reality is we need to do each other favors. That's just how it is. I would be selective. So sometimes you're going to say, no, I'm not introducing you because you're a hot mess. I mean, you're just going to be honest. Yeah. But you need to be comfortable doing it for a lot of people, and people need to be comfort for you. But yes, you need to be selective.
Okay. So it's like that warm introduction that we need. You know, I think the biggest, like for me, the biggest kind of eye-opening moment was when I realized that social capital actually had more monetary value than liquid capital. And I think a lot of people still haven't quite gotten that. And I even find myself, you know, still pushing through that process, right? Because it really is a change of mindset where you realize that it's, like you said, well, it's not what you have, it's like who you know. And we all hear that. And I think we use that in the context of career development. So people typically understand if I want to get a job, I need to basically go figure out who do I know that works at such and such company, or hey, can you refer to me to this or that? But when it comes to wealth, so when it comes to building a business, when it comes to trying to understand the stock market, or even knowing, right, what's going on in the stock market in terms of different industries, when it comes to real estate, and you're thinking about the relationships, later on tomorrow evening, we're going to have a real estate panel. And one of the critical things even there in terms of building wealth is that, you know, you need to leverage the whole community when you're getting into real estate and development, right? You need to basically understand like where is the trend going? And you don't understand that kind of in a silo. Right. So, you know, what do you think about, you know, in terms of the missed opportunity with social capital, just in the misunderstanding of its value truly?
Yeah, and it's for me, it's about getting in on the deal. Like real estate's deals, business is deals. Even, you know, everything you do is you want to get a good deal. You want to get in. So if you want to invest in stock, sometimes everybody doesn't get to hear about it. In fact, if it's really good, they're not trying to tell everybody. And so how can you make sure you're one of the people that gets talked to, that gets in on the deal? So like in real estate, there's so many ways in which the way the deal is structured, they can only bring in 35 people. They can only bring in 25 people. And so how do you want to increase your chances that you get to be part of that group of people that get to do this deal? Because knowledge is one thing, opportunity is the other. So you may have all of the knowledge, you know how to deal in real estate, but you have groups that are going out and buying real estate, syndicating it, doing it the way real estate is done. And you're just trying to figure out, how can I get in? Yeah. I mean, you got people with money who can't seem to figure out how to get in to where the deals are happening. And you got people who don't have money, but know how to get in the deals, because you can always go get the money. It's hard to get the deals. Yeah. It's hard to get to the owner of the property before everybody else does. So it's a lot of times when you think about that, you want to be part of the group that gets in. You want to be the kind of person that calls and says, hey, I'm putting a group of people together. You know, we're starting a company, or they're raising some money, or we got some properties we're looking at. And so part of that is learning how to be the kind of person that people want to include on the deal.
I think the other part of that is understanding that, okay, not every deal that someone calls you, I mean, some deals are just hustles, right? But not every deal is going to be the deal you want to get in. Right. But it's almost like if you build that habit of just like, I never turn down a coffee date. I'm not talking about a romantic date, but in coffee date, like an entrepreneurship world, right? It's, you know, hey, you should meet with so-and-so, grab coffee with them. I don't know what I have to do with so-and-so. I'm in medical devices. They're in a pizza delivery company, but you never know when that relationship is going to turn around and be beneficial in your favor. Yep. I imagine for you it's the same. I know you've been meeting with everybody in town.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my hometown. Yeah. So, you know, and I have a big family, and so there's so many connections that you can have that you don't think about. I mean, people try to tell you that, like, you use your connections. So some that it's your first grade teacher. It's your people. Now, I was pretty geeky and a know-it-all in first grade. So sometimes people have reputations when they were younger that don't really serve them well as adults. Okay, so you might not be going back to your first grade teacher because the way she remembers you, she may not be willing to introduce you. But for some of us, understanding that all of those relationships may end up being very beneficial to you. And so, like what Angelique said, make time for it. Like the biggest problem for a lot of people is this sounds like it takes up time. And it does. Everything does. And you only have so much time. So that means you've got to make time to meet with people. You've got to look at your calendar and say, so how much do I have to invest in social capital? How many hours a week or a month am I going to make sure? Now, some people who are really savvy about this. So when I was younger in my career, somebody advised me, do not eat at your desk. You need to be having lunch with somebody every day, Monday through Friday. You're building your career. This is the time to develop your connections. And so you better have a lunch date every day, Monday through Friday. So don't worry about you doing too much if you do Saturday, Sundays. Yeah. But Monday through Friday, if I walk in here and you're sitting, eating at your desk, lunch is the time when you build social capital.
For me, right, as an African-American female, being an entrepreneur in a very white male-dominated space, it can be really challenging to forge relationships at times. And I had to learn the knack for that, right? Because you don't want anything to be misconstrued. But I think irregardless of whether you're, a Black and brown individual, whether you're male or female, sometimes it can be really challenging for us to build those relationships, to really connect through those relationships. And somebody gave me a piece of advice one time that I had just stuck with for my whole entire life since I heard it. And they told me that people love the sound of their own name. And so if you are one of those people that's like, hey, I'm always sitting at my desk at lunch and I haven't reached out to anybody, or maybe you have your own business. You're like, hey, I haven't bothered to kind of reach out to people locally or even virtually. Or maybe you kind of pass people all the time, kind of end up in the same function all the time, And I had a situation where I was trying to build this social capital, sort of say, and people, for whatever, they couldn't remember my name, couldn't remember who I was, although I thought I was pretty identifiable, being the only African-American female in the whole entire group. But somebody told me, people love the sound of their name. So what I would do is I started, passing people, if I pass them on the sidewalk, or I pass them out, and I would memorize their name, and I would say, hey, John Smith, how are you doing? And they would just be like, how does she know my name? So they felt almost guilted into remembering who I was. And I kid you not, I think within a week, everybody knew who I was. People were like, hey, why don't you come with us? Come to lunch. Hey, why don't you come hang out with us? Over here or whatever. And then I was able to build that social capital. And one critical piece about that building was when I got to lunch, when I got to the after work things, that's actually how I ended up picking up the entrepreneurial spirit, because they were talking about business, startups, and, and all the pleasant. And I was like, whoa, these are the conversations I was missing out on.
And it is like, so building social capital, don't forget, it's social capital. And so you already know, some people already know how good they're going to be at that. You already know how comfortable you are. So you got to figure out a way that works best for you, because it needs to be authentic. There's nothing worse than inauthentic people. Hey there, how you doing? That's not going to work. I mean, you think it's going to work, but we're all going, who is this person?
Where you come from?
Right. You got to know what is authentic. I'm fortunate because I grew up in Louisville, and Louisville felt like a small town for me. And so, like, my dad is really outgoing. And so he tends to find ways to start. He's a great conversation starter. It's like he makes everybody his friend, so I've actually, my mother noticed one day that I was walking around wishing every man on the street happy Father's Day. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. Like, if I just saw a man, I didn't know if he had kids or not. He just looked over a certain age, and I was just walking up going, happy Father's Day. And my mother's like, you are so much like your father. Because that's what you find authentic ways. And, everybody's like, thank you. Hey, thank you very much. And so that I learned that having this authentic approach to dealing with people, I want to get to know you. So I'm one of those people I learn from others. I want to know your story, because your story is going to make me understand how the world works, gives me another piece of the puzzle. So I don't care who you are. I make friends no matter, and everybody in the building. So if you're the cleaning staff, y'all be surprised. I don't think y'all be surprised how much information about a company you can get from the people who come in at night to clean up right? If you're willing to get to know them, man, they see everything, they know everything. But because I grew up in a small town, that comes very easy to me. Like, I'm not comfortable if you're coming in my office every day and I don't know your name. That feels weird to me anyway. Yeah. And I see you every day and I don't know where you live and I don't know how many kids you have. And so it's really, social is real. Like if you invest in it, if you get to know people, you get the rewards. So a lot of times, but that's why I said it comes easy for me because of the way I grew up. Yeah. We don't have strangers. We don't like strangers. So we got to quickly make you into somebody safe and somebody we feel comfortable with. And you do that by getting to know each other. And so you do it quick. You start finding commonality. So in business, it should be a lot easier because at least you have that in common. So you can, everybody in business is like when you're in school, at least you have something in common to start the conversation. And then it leads to those more personal, intimate details that are really helpful to you.
So we know social capital is something you invest in, just like all other forms of capital.
Yep.
By nature of that, there are certain legal constructs. I mean, you think about, I'm going to ask you because you're a lawyer, right? You think about a contract is basically, here's some legal parameters around our social relationship.
Yes. Yep.
And one thing, and the thing that you are always saying is that a contract is just only as good as the relationship.
Yeah.
So really, it starts with the relationship that's solid. And then you're just putting the legalese around it. So can you talk about that? Because I think sometimes we meet people, we even get into business with people, we're investing with people, and we don't have a contract. Here we had in the previous segment, Conrad Daniels talking about he had a family contract, which is novel and new, right, to many of us. But even in our business operations as entrepreneurs, I think a lot of us are operating without a contract. So kind of tell me your experience and kind of the value of those contracts and legalizing that relationship.
And if everybody remembers, contracts always seem so weird and formal, but let's be honest, contracts were designed because we're human and we sit down and we look each other in the eye and we say we're in total agreement. And then as soon as we leave the room, we are totally not in agreement. Like we need to understand that we think we're in agreement, but when you put it in writing, it's supposed to make us feel like, yes, this is what we agreed to. Now, unfortunately, I think a lot of people have to admit they haven't read their contract. So that's not what they're doing. They use it as like insurance. I've got a contract so that way I can make sure I get paid or it's legit. But it doesn't actually capture all of the things that they've agreed to. But that's the purpose of it. And so like you said, there's family contracts. I just got a call. So I don't know if you guys, so one of the business owners that I work with, she has found love. Ooh. She got business first, found love second. Now she wants to know, don't I need a prenup? Okay. And it's like, wow, that's a contract for you, right? It's like, whoa. And I'm listening and I'm thinking, well, you might. Like, that's a good question. So what goes into that? So there's all these contracts. So when I do business with family members, I negotiate, I do a lot of negotiating. I think it's best. I think we stay friends. I think we stay getting along when we have a contract. Because I feel like it's the misunderstandings. You remember one thing, I remember another, is what leads to everybody getting, that's what really feeds, like when we can say, like when you play, spades, when you play games, let's go look at the rules. That's what your contract should be like. Like you remembered it one way, but can we go back and look at the rules? I think that's a great way to keep people getting along. Use your contracts to set the rules. Everybody agreed to it. And then let that guide. So when everybody remembers it differently, you have the rules to go back to.
Oh, well, Dana, I am so glad that you joined us. Okay. We don't have much time. I think we got maybe 60 seconds on the clock.
Oh, that was fast.
Can you give me a 30-second last snap social capital piece of advice,
I think the most important thing is that you're always investing in social capital. So every chance you get, so don't think it's just something you put on your calendar. You're doing it all the time. And you can lose it too, just like any investment. So be careful. If social capital is personal support and encouragement, then public attacks would be the opposite. So try to avoid that, try to stay positive and encouraging of other businesses. Avoid bad-mouthing them. Just stay in that positive, encouraging, supportive mode. And that way your social capital keeps building and you never take a hit because someone sees you being negative.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited for our next segment, which is going to be about love and money. So stay tuned. Hold tight.
This episode is brought to you by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the Community Foundation of Louisville, and Life Development Corporation, along with Nimbus Marketing, Inc. and the National Black MBA Association, Kentucky.